Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Diaspora Glitch Podcast, the space where we explore identity, politics, migration, culture, and the human stories shaping our world today. I'm your host once again, and today's conversation is one that carries emotion, urgency, and reflection for millions of Nigerians, both at home and abroad. As Nigeria slowly moves toward the 2027 general elections, the political atmosphere is already heating up. Conversations around governance, economic hardship, insecurity, democratic accountability, party instability, and the future of leadership are dominating public discourse, not just within Nigeria, but across diaspora communities across the world. For many Nigerians abroad, home never truly leaves you. The cost of living crisis back home affects families here. Political instability affects international perception. Governance failures influence migration patterns, remittances, opportunities, and even how Nigerians are treated globally. Today, we are asking some important questions. To help us unpack these questions, I am joined by a strong voice in the diaspora community with deep experience in civic engagement, leadership, and political analysis. Joining us today from the United Kingdom is Graham Elendu. Graham is a seasoned political relations professional and journalist with extensive experience across radio, television, and print media. His career has included work with Radio Unipox, Business Eye Magazine, River State Television, and Cable Mission TV. Today, he works with the NHS in the UK as information system trainer while remaining deeply involved in African community building initiatives. He currently serves as the president of Africans living in Newcastle and has held several youth leadership positions in Nigeria. Graham, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joseph, for having me. Thank you, viewers. I look forward to very engaging and inspiring time with you guys here.
Thank you very much, Graham. So let's look at the national mood. Let me start broadly. If you look at social media conversations, everyday discussions in markets, offices, churches, universities, and even among Nigerians abroad, there seems to be a mixture of frustration, exhaustion, anger, but also cautious hope. From where you sit presently, how would you describe the mood of ordinary Nigerians today as we gradually approach 2027 general elections in Nigeria?
To be fair, right, the atmosphere at the minute is the one I could describe as gloomy. You know, before the very current administration, one would say it was an atmosphere of hope. We had this hope that things will get better, probably in the next dispensation. People had their hopes high. You see, my father says something to me all the time. He says, hunger with hope doesn't kill. But I want to say this is not the situation in Nigeria at the minute. A lot of Nigerians have lost hope. A lot of Nigerians have lost faith. There's a saying that there is light at the end of the tunnel. This cannot be said to be the situation in Nigeria. It looks like we already know that the end of the tunnel is also going to be gloomy. And there's a lot of reasons why this is the situation. It is because the current government have not shown any form of being Democrats. You can see this from how they treat the judiciary. You can see this from how they have tried to kill opposition. You can see this as from how they interpret court orders, how they flaunt them carelessly. You can also see this from how they shop for court orders that suits them. You can see this from how the people perceive the judiciary. At some point, the judiciary was seen as the hope of the common man. That's not the case with this current government. A lot of people have lost hope from places where they used to have the slightest form of hope. So, at the minute, what I see from the atmosphere is that of gloom. And if things remain this way, it's really unfortunate that the enthusiasm of the citizens are being, the lowest, if I must say.
Thank you very much for this response. You mentioned an atmosphere of gloomy. Does this also pertain to how young people galvanize their interest ahead of the elections?
Certainly, certainly, that gloom
Yeah.
has taken away the enthusiasm we have in young people. And I'll give a few instances. Young persons believed prior to this time that our votes will count. And when people believe their votes will count, it increases their enthusiasm to go out and vote. But at the minute, people have seen with what this current government has done that there is a high likelihood that votes will not count.
So you think
And
this
that
could
shocked
reduce political
me.
participation?
Yes, it sure reduces political participation. I've been engaged in, with a lot of young persons that have interest in leadership, that have interest in joining politics. But then when we have conversation, they are all saying, no, not on this, not in this tenor. Because, for instance, under the previous president, late General Muhammadu Buhari, people believed that you could vie for an office and if you win, Buhari was such a person, despite all the baggages around him, he allowed electioneering to flourish. Buhari had I think his cousin lose election without influencing it. This is not the case with the incumbent president. The president we have now is highly undemocratic, autocratic. He is not a Democrat by any standard. We can see this in the manner in which they've conducted their primaries in the ruling party APC. We can see this from how they handled the issue of suspending a democratically elected governor, the governor of Rivers State. These actions do not in any way suggest that this president is democratic. And people are worried. Building up to these primaries for all the parties, a lot of persons that I spoke with that prior to this time had interest in joining the 2027 general election told me categorically that they don't see themselves joining because where you have an undemocratic president like Tinubu, and then you have very undemocratic characters like Nyesom Wike running the judiciary, killing the opposition, deciding what happens with INEC by building edifices for INEC and all that. People do not believe in any way that the next election is going to be democratic. They don't believe that the next election votes will count. But then, I'm not encouraging us to go that route. It is a feeling they want to instill in us because when there's voter apathy, that's when they are able to, hatch their plan
Yeah.
and materialize their rigging. This is the signal they are sending, but we can actually challenge that signal.
Yeah. Thank you, Graham, for setting this scene. You mentioned you regularly engage with young people, I mean, persons in the UK and outside the UK regarding this upcoming election. Based on your
Yeah.
observations, how deeply are Nigerians abroad emotionally connected to what is happening politically back home?
To be fair, most Nigerians abroad have not left home, either intentionally or unintentionally. And I'll break that down. Intentionally, their body is somewhere else, but all the activities happening back home affect them wherever they are. And I could cite a couple of instances. Under this current administration, we didn't have ambassadors in most of the countries around the world. And you know how important that means for international relations. Because of actions like that, most countries placed ban on Nigerians.
Yeah.
We see what happened with Donald Trump placing a ban on Nigerians entering the US. You see what happens even here in the UK where I reside. A lot of unfriendly immigration policies are being churned out. And trust me, to a large extent, these things are engineered by the decision of, our home countries.
Yeah. Also, what is happening in South Africa, for example.
Exactly. You see the xenophobia in South Africa. These things are strengthened by decisions that happen back home. Countries that see that you have a very good economy back home, they don't look at you less because they know that you being in their country is just a matter of choice. You
Yeah.
have options going back home. But when it looks like you do not have an option even back home, they tend to treat you with some form of callousness. So you see our international policy, international relations, which has been badly battered by the image of our current president and its leadership with the carelessness of both the president, the head of the legislation, which is Godswill Akpabio, the carelessness from one of his favorite ministers, Nyesom Wike, you see that the international community holds us with just a pinch of salt. And whether you like it or not, everything that happens home affects you wherever you are. So somehow
Yeah,
you never get to leave home. Again, you might be abroad, but you have families back home. The hardship back home falls on you. It increases the amount of money you probably be sending back home because the demand back home becomes enormous.
the
And
remittances.
yes, remittances. So even though you have left, you still haven't left. So I tell people that
Again,
most either consciously or unconsciously, you never get to leave home. You
I
never get to leave home.
I see. That is such an important reflection, because migration doesn't erase emotional citizenship, from what you
Not
have
at all.
outlined now. Even years abroad, many Nigerians still carry the burden of Nigeria psychologically, financially, and socially. I mean, it is
True.
good the way you just reflected that. But let's talk directly on governance. Many Nigerians say the issue is no longer simply politics, survival. Food prices continue rising, the naira remains unstable, young professionals are living in large numbers, families are stretched thin. I would like to understand, what do you think ordinary Nigerians want from leadership right now?
You see the funny thing, right? Nigeria is the easiest country to govern. Nigerians are the easiest to please. We saw what happened in Tunisia. Just by the mere hike in price of bread, a government was toppled. Do you want to recount what Nigerians have gone through? There has been hike in fuel. There has been hike in electricity. These are things that the everyday Nigerians use. I don't even want to talk about bread. We already know that, it's almost 1,000% increase in most of these
Yeah,
commodities. Yet Nigerians are still peaceful. They are still, in quotes, hopeful. To some extent, I also think that they are being docile, right?
yes.
Now, Nigerians are the easiest. They don't demand for much. As much as I know Nigerians, the minute you can sort out good roads, electricity, water, very basic things that we see in social studies that we were taught, in primary school, basic amenities. The moment Nigerians get basic amenities, they don't demand much.
Yeah.
Not
But
in other
but
countries where they are demanding for international relations, they are demanding for a visit to the space. They are demanding for, increase in science and all that. Nigerians just want the basic. The
yeah, but
minute you give them the basic, they are okay. Yet, government after government has failed to provide these things that we were taught in primary and secondary school as basic amenities.
speaking about basic communities, draw instances with Tunisia. I would like to explore that part a bit further. I mean, look at Nepal. A lot of things happened, and citizens, took to the streets to demand a change of government. Would you not think that the level of satisfaction among Nigerians, particularly those back home, not taking action that could change the current situation, is enabling this kind of
Well, you are
bad
very right.
leadership?
The lack of action is enabling the government. There's a saying that evil will continue to thrive if good people sit back
Do
and do
not,
nothing. Yes, it can be seen to be what is going on. But in the defense of Nigerians also, I would want to say that Nigerians have not always sat back and do nothing. But the government capitalized on, using the paraphernalia of government to instill fear in the minds of people. Do you want me to recall the NSAS protest? People came out in their numbers. What did the government do? Funny enough, the person at the helm of affairs in Lagos State at that time, though not officially the governor, the de facto godfather of Lagos State, that made the call for what happened, the brutality that happened in the last NSAS rally, is now the president of the nation. So you see, somehow they've been able to instill fear in the minds of people. A lot of people died during the NSAS. Until today, nothing has happened to those families. So it looked like when you sacrifice, in quote, yourself for the country, nothing happens. So this can in turn, reflect on why people are now in quote, minding their businesses. But that's not the way
Okay.
forward. We should, we are expected to come out. We're expected to speak up. Nevertheless, for some of us, we've always advocated a different form of agitation. And we've always said that in spite of the agitation of taking to the streets,
Yeah.
you can take to the polling unit because we think that's where the real change should occur. Imagine that the number of people that came out for NSAS in their number and enthusiasm will come out on the day of election to vote against a government and stand. Trust me, there would be visible changes.
I mean, thank you for summing up it up this way. I hope that citizens and viewers back in Nigeria can look at this and see how they can draw some form of inspiration. But let's, look at a diaspora perspective to this. Does Nigerian economic situation change how Nigerians abroad see their future relationship with the home country?
Of course it does. When back home, rather than progress, all you get from back home is retrogression. Every minute you speak to people at home, things are going downwards. We should understand that migration to other countries have different purposes. For some persons, it's a short stay. I just want to go abroad, improve in my skills, and then come back home. For some others, I just want to go abroad, make some money, and then come back home. Whichever is your situation, the thing that happens back home could affect such a notion. So if, for instance, you had said, I want to go abroad, just do 5 years, improve my skills, and then come back. And then you keep hearing that from the time you left, are going downwards. If you wanted to do just 5 years and come back, you would have a review. You say, no, let me see if I can do 10 years and probably get a better standing before I go back home. Getting
I
to
see.
10 years and getting worse. You say, okay, let me see if I can just do 15 years and then go back home. Let me see if I can gather more money, before I go back home. So yes, you cannot run away from the fact that what happens at home affects every decision that citizens in diaspora make.
Wow. And I hope that for some whose goal is just to stay for a short time and then return back, that things can improve in Nigeria to encourage such a return. Earlier in this conversation, you did mention about litigations, internal crises, how some of the state actors are using state instruments to bully out political oppositions, from actively engaging. Now let's move into the political landscape itself. Across several major political parties, we continue to see internal conflicts, leadership disputes, defections, court cases, factional battles, and questions about ideology. Sometimes it feels like Nigerian politics is permanently in campaign mode. Graham, from your observation, how does this political instability affect, the broader scheme of things?
Politics affects everything that happens. It affects every sphere of life. Politics affects academics. It affects businesses. It affects everything. Lately, in this current dispensation, we've not had anything that looks any semblance of democratic existence. And I would want to quote Peter Obi because I agree with him 100%. Obi had said over and over again that the internal crisis in all the political parties, especially the opposition political parties, are all orchestrated by the ruling government. And that is a clear fact. Obi would also say at different times that while he was governor of Anambra State, the then president, Yaradua, when there seemed to be some internal crisis, called on the state players to say, I do not want any crisis in the opposition parties. And then they allowed all opposition to thrive in their best interest.
Yeah,
Muhammadu Buhari of blessed memory, despite being a military man, fierce in disposition, I gather he's quite a very soft man from the inside, did not interfere in opposition party activities in the country. What do we see today? The government is using the likes of the FCT minister, Nyeso Mezonwonwike, to destabilize, first of all, the then major opposition party, the PDP.
yeah,
He used the courts, he used every paraphernalia of state to cripple that opposition party. a party that started with a huge number of governors and senators and the likes, today don't even have one anymore. They didn't stop there. The minute they perceived that the ADC would be the next opposition party, they sent in internal enablers just to see if they can also crumble that opposition. Should we talk about what they did with the Labour Party just because Peter Obi was in that party at that time?
Yeah, yeah, but the
Which is why
governments
the
of the day,
introduction of NDC, which is why the introduction of, yeah, go ahead.
they have constantly denied, I mean, the presidential spokesperson have constantly denied this.
We don't expect them to accept, but we know that's the truth.
But
It is
those truths
very,
does not have any empirical connection.
of course, there are. What happens to the courts? Why are the courts only giving out judgments that favor them? And you can see that key players of the government even interpret court judgments before they are being delivered. That alone tells you that most of these judgments are written and handed over to the judges. It is painful. Prior to this time, the judiciary used to be a very reverend one. As a child, I wanted to be a lawyer. And the reason I wanted to be a lawyer was because I saw how lawyers carried themselves. I saw the role lawyers played in the society. That's not the case today. Today, to a large extent, all the troubles we face as a nation can be traced back to our judiciary. It's a very
Well,
sad one. A
well,
very sad one. And
this is
because of these things, even economically, we're being affected. No investor wants to come into a country that he cannot even trust the judiciary. So if you have litigation with the government or you have litigation with
yeah.
someone, you know it goes to the highest bidder. That is not how a country should be run. The country at the minute is run like a mafia setup, a mafia setup. And that does not help any country in any way. Do we want to talk about a country being led by people with corruption tax on their head? Those are the people they appoint to head parastatals. People with corruption tax on their head. Those are the people they send as ambassadors. People with all form of ill around their name. My friend told me one time that one of the first criteria to get involved in Tinubu's government is that you must have one EFCC case in your head. Because if you don't have EFCC case in your head, it's not going to have anything to do with you. It's an assemblage of criminals, I must say. And that
Wow.
alone, in turn, tells how the international community perceives us. I don't even want to
Well,
talk about the fact that the president, at the minute, before he became president, his current spokesperson, Daniel Bala, had challenged him to be a drug lord. His current ambassador to some of the
Me-
foreign countries,
Mexico,
to Mexico, has also accused him of being a drug lord.
I think
These
Reno
accused
or Macron.
Exactly. One of Mokri had accused him and said he had proofs and everything. If he was a drug lord. We don't even want to talk about all that. We have that image to battle with. And then we now have all these people, the likes of Nyesom Wike, at the helm of affairs, deciding what happens. Look at what they are doing to a sitting governor. And you think people outside the country would look at us as normal? We have a lot to deal with in our image. We have a lot. And nobody overlooks this, which is why we've had a very low turnout of foreign investors in the country.
Wow, this is very deep. I mean, a lot of issues to unpack. One thing many Nigerians keep asking is whether the political class truly understands how important citizens are becoming. There is, in light of what you're saying, there's a growing sense that people are demanding accountability faster than the political system is evolving.
It will be wrong to say they don't understand. They do. They understand the importance of the citizen. And that is why they've kept the citizens where they are at the minute. In one of my interviews prior to 2019 general election, I said something. And it's something I said out of deep thinking, deep research. There's something called economic control. And that's what the government has been doing. You see, when the people are poor, they accept anything. So what do the government do? They starve the people of economic growth. So during the election, they are going to release some form of indices that looks like economic growth. They will release some funds. Somebody that has been hungry for years, when close to the election, you promise him, you give him 5,000 naira. It looks like the world to him. So they use that economic starvation to decide how the people will think. And it takes a lot of courage for the people to understand this strategy and then challenge it.
So you think the idea of vote buying is a well calculated scheme
It is a well
that
calculated,
is,
not that I think, I know. It is
you know,
well calculated.
that is schemed from the day one to impoverish the people, weaponize poverty, only to dole out cash close to election time in order to, influence their decisions.
That's exactly what it is. And that is why also appointments into offices are viewed from political point of views, first of all, before they are viewed from qualification. If not, tell me why people with no pedigree will be heading our parastatals. Meanwhile, we have people that are qualified, people that are experts in this field. They don't get to see those offices.
Yeah.
So appointment is being negotiated. It's negotiated from a political point of view rather than from a qualification point of view.
Well, building on this civic engagement, let's talk about youth participation in digital political culture. Nigeria has one of the youngest populations in the world, and social media has fundamentally transformed political conversations. But social media is also full of misinformation. So, propaganda, tribal polarization, and emotional manipulation. Do you think social media is helping democracy more than hurting it right now?
Truth is, imagine what would be happening in Nigeria if we didn't have social media. Would have been dead. I want to, maybe I can see if I can liken Nigeria to North Korea. Imagine a place where you don't have social media. Let me give you an instance of what would have been happening. Look at the Nigerian police, for instance. Imagine the level of police brutalities that happen in the country. Imagine that social media is in there. The existence of social media has, to a large extent, tried, it hasn't stopped it, but it has tried to curtail because this time around, when these actors want to do these things, they don't know where the cameras are coming from. And the minute you get it on camera, you've got an evidence. Imagine what would happen if we didn't have social media with the insurgents we have in the north. The media
Nobody will know
houses are
what's happening.
scared. The media houses are scared to report it. So imagine what will happen if we didn't have social media. Imagine what is happening in our political parties' elections, like the primaries. The both of us have seen how these voting are being counted. You see where they count one, two, three, and the next number is 1,000. Imagine that we didn't have social media to push out these scripts. All these things will all die on notice. So yes, social media has been a very good tool in reshaping how things are done because people are
So,
careful now. Nevertheless, social media has its own downside, but then the downside does not in any way outweigh the good side. So yes, social media has shaped how things are done in our society, in our polity, in our governance lately.
so you think the balance between hope and exhaustion has been redefined by social media for this generation?
Yes, it has, I would say. Also, you need to understand that social media also has a way of giving us some form of comparison. With social media, we see what young people are doing in other countries, and then we take some form of, solace in those things, and we say, oh, if young people can do it, then we too we can do it. You know, so it's social media because if we didn't have social media, our traditional media houses, of course, they are being regulated by government. They tell them what to put out there or not. I've worked in the media space before, so I understand both government and private parastatals. So I understand these things. So imagine that the social media is in there. Let me also even tell you, imagine that we didn't have the social media space. These things we're discussing at the minute would not be discussed in regular media houses. So yes, it's a platform for us to talk about it now.
Indeed.
All issues like this would not be allowed on the regular media house because they will be gatekept. There's always gatekeeping in every media house. So imagine that we didn't have social media. It would have been a doom actually.
Yeah, I think I agree with these reflections. When you think about 2027 in Nigeria, what is the
Mhm.
one thing you hope improves most?
Free and fair election. I want stronger institutions, and one of such institutions will be the INEC. I want INEC to be INEC, which is Independent Electoral Commission. At the minute, the independence in it is far gone. It's not independent in any way. Let's see what happens with the INEC chairman. You see how not independent he is. This is somebody that has publicly identified with the ruling party at different points. How independent can such a person be? Let me reflect what true independence of INEC means or should be. I'll take you back to Abia State. In this election that introduced Alex Otti as governor, the show of independence was seen by Professor Nenna Oti, the then electoral officer compiling that result. When she was approached and, there were attempts to bully her, she stood her ground. That's the definition of independence. If such display of independence can be translated across the states, across the nation, then we would be a lot more happy getting into the general election. Nevertheless, I'm very hopeful. These things are done just to weaken the populace. If we still come out in mass, if we still come out to participate, if we still come out to vote, it will be difficult for them, despite the, in quotes, non-independence of this body. But because of the involvement of the people, it will make it difficult for them to, manipulate the process. I would also want to tell you that it is because of the involvement of the people, like states like Lagos State. They saw how overwhelming the winning of Labour Party in the last election was. That's why they allowed the votes be. If it wasn't
Yeah,
that overwhelming, if people didn't come out in mass, both to vote and defend their vote, it will be easy for these politicians, manipulate the process.
yeah. And in the spirit of hope, responsibility, and the future, I want us to move away slightly from politics as we begin to unwind as competitions and return to politics as humanity. Yeah, because behind every elections are real people, families struggling, graduates uncertain about the future, diaspora Nigerians carrying emotional burdens, young citizens searching for dignity and opportunity. I would like to ask you, Graham, what would you say to Nigerians abroad who feel emotionally disconnected or discouraged about Nigeria's future? And how can they be of influence in upcoming general elections?
Some of us have advocated for diaspora voting, which our INEC has not given to us. Those in diaspora, truth be told, like I said, you never get to leave home. It is in our place to always, find out what is happening at home, bring back the knowledge you've gathered from, any part of the world that you've been to. Do not give up, because that's the idea. They want you to give up. But some of us have said to ourselves that we will never give up because there's no place like home. No matter where you go, remember the road that leads you home. And I don't think I want to get back home and it is the same way I left it. No. That is the reason why I've always been involved in everything that happens back home, both politically, economically, and and otherwise. Both in information sharing. That is, I have encouraged those in diaspora to get involved. Get involved in party politics because that is part of the process that leads to the general election. Get involved in what happens in your local community. Some of us also tend to give back to the community as much as we can. We cannot leave everything for government. That is why some of us get involved in some form of project back home, solely funded by ourselves and our networks. Sometimes it's not about you. It is capitalizing on the network you have to give back to the society in any way that you know you can elevate the suffering of the people back home. Do not hesitate. This has been my stance all the while, and it will remain my stance. While
Yeah,
we
thank
hope
you.
for a better government in the future, we should do our part as individuals.
Thank you for this reflection. Two things from your conversation. You mentioned about diaspora voting. I look at every country, especially the countries we can describe as first world countries. There is always diaspora vote. And when those votes come in, they most times change the landscape and the direction
Dynamic.
of who wins. Why do you think it is difficult for the Nigerian government, the
To
Electoral
implement
Commission, to
diaspora voting.
to implement diaspora voting, despite the
It is
huge
simple.
population of Nigerians
It
in
is
diaspora?
simple. It is simple. When people are in diaspora, they are no longer controlled by your economic starvation. So it means that they have seen the world. It means they have more independent minds. So it simply means that they cannot accommodate most of your rubbish anymore. The current government, and to a large extent the governments before, know that the moment we have diaspora voting, most of them will not be voted for, especially by the diasporans. It will, determine how the election goes. They would use different form of excuses, but I tell people that the fact that I can still bank from where I am, then I should be able to vote from where I am. That's the truth. It is of technology. No, it's an issue of political will. And why is that political will not there? Because they know it will not favor them. Nothing else.
And speaking about not favoring them, when I look at the voting system of voting in Nigeria, they have this thing called the voter's card. When you compare that to voting system in other countries, people vote based on either citizenship or residence card. Looking at voter apathy and how glitches can affect transparent from what we experienced from the last election. What do you think with the idea of switching from what they call voter card to people voting based on IDs or international or their.
The big problem is we don't even have unified identification model. That's where the challenge is. In advanced countries, with just your phone number, for instance, I can call up every detail about you. But in Nigeria, we do not have even an identified or unified identification means. Banks are asking for BVN as their means of identification. Other places are asking for international passport as means of identification. Voting is asking for voters card. All these things needs to be imputed as one. That way we would have a database. We do not have a database. That's where the big challenge is. We have to first of all sort out the database. It is when we sort out the database that we can now talk about any of these things. We are not having a database not because we can't have it, not because we don't have the brains, not because we don't have the manpower. What we just don't have is the political will, nothing else.
This has been such a thoughtful and honest conversation. Perhaps we can circle back in this in the future to look at the party candidates and when the primaries has been formalized to look at the dynamics of these candidates. One thing that stands out is that Nigerians, whether home or abroad, are deeply invested in the country's future. Beneath the frustration, criticism, and political tension is still a profound desire for dignity, stability, fairness, and national progress. As 2027 slowly approaches, perhaps the biggest question is not simply who wins election, but whether governance can begin rebuilding public trust. Because ultimately, democracy survives not only through ballots, but through accountability, empathy, participation, and institutions citizens can believe in. I want to sincerely thank you today, Graham. Thank you for your insight and your honesty.
Thank you for having me.
And I'd like to thank everyone listening around the world. This has been Diaspora Glitch Podcast. Stay thoughtful, stay engaged. Until next time.
Thank you for having me.